In the beginning, we've been obsessed. Obsessed with power. Obsessed with success. Obsessed with perfection. Obsessed with monkeys and balloons? Bloons Tower Defense 6, a game beloved by many and what some people might call the epitome of tower defense games. With developers that actually care, it's easy to see why this game is loved and praised by so many people. They constantly provide innovative ways by collaborating with the community to show the game's constant evolution. One thing that people are obsessed with is trying to push games to its absolute limit, and one way this is evident is by trying to go as far as possible in this game. So, what is the highest possible round? Wait, hold on. Before you do that intro, there's actually an answer. And surprisingly, the highest possible round is, drumroll please, 2,147,548. Okay, yeah, you can probably make it there if you cheat, use some mods, some unintentional bugs left in the game, but what about going as far as we can based on how the developers, Ninja Kiwi, intended? Well, strap yourselves in because today we're going to go on the most insane journey, from explaining gameplay mechanics, understanding hardware, quality of life, so we can finally answer today's question. What is the highest possible round? So, why is it so hard to go super late into this game? Raxor, surely you're over-exaggerating. Come on, man, it's not that hard. Well, to have a full appreciation of what's going on here, first, let's understand how free play works. After beating the set rounds laid out for each difficulty, easy, medium, or hard, you're presented with a choice. Close out the game and move on to the next map to earn your coveted medals, or to go into what's called free play. Free play is the game processing further and further into uncharted rounds until your defense is no longer able to withstand the onslaught of balloons coming to your face. For the first few iterations of BTD6, Ninja Kiwi decided not to really touch free play, probably because they had a lot of different aspects to worry about. How to balance the game, attract new players, make new heroes, and keep the game interesting. Maximize profits off of young children. Use code Raxor, by the way. Because of this, people could set up pretty easy defenses. Since balloons all had a set number of health, you just needed a few sun temples, a nice big sun god, and you're good to go. But on the morning of July 3rd, 2019, something changed. That day, version 11 was released, and with it, some pretty critical changes to free play. Suddenly, they increased the ramping of HP and scaling of the balloons, and it was no longer easy to simply pass even round 150. A simple way to think about it was this. A mob class balloon. This cute little blimp on round 40 would sit at a whopping 200 HP. With this update, suddenly if you had a mob on round 501, it won't have 200 HP. Rather, you would now have 496.5 times as much HP, meaning that it would have 99,300.
Massive, bro.
Well, you know what, that still doesn't seem too terrible, but when you suddenly take the strongest balloon, which is a bad, which is 28,000 HP at round 100, suddenly at round 501, it's 13,902,000. Yikes. But that's not even taking into account fortified bands. There are fortified versions of every balloon which double its HP, so suddenly we're looking at 27,804,000. For comparison, some of the most difficult balloons in the games are bosses. Bosses have two versions, normal and elite, with tons of HP and usually special requirements to beat each one of them. The HP of the elite versions, which are painfully difficult, are as follows.
That's a lot of damage.
So essentially, they have the same, if not a little more HP than some of the elite bosses. That's thick. But as if Ninja Kiwi thought this wasn't enough, they decided to increase the speed as well. So not only are they thick, they quick. Speed scaling jumps drastically, and by round 251, everything is 5.98 or almost 6 times as fast. To make things worse, every single round gets faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. Okay, surely that's enough, right? I mean, that sounds pretty difficult. There's some exponential scaling, but wait, there's more! Rounds after round 100 are completely random. So you have no idea what you're gonna face. You're not gonna face just some ZOMG class balloons, or maybe just a few BFBs, or you don't even know if there's gonna be a whole onslaught of fortified bads coming down your face. So now, they thick, they quick, and they random? Okay, but not everything is huge and fast. During the game's existence, there have been some other updates along the way to help us tackle free play. With the introduction of bosses, they also changed it so that rounds 101 to 140 are now set rounds. Other rounds were set rounds, and these rounds are 163, 200, and 263. Another note was that with the exception of 140 having 1 fortified bad, and round 200 having 2 fortified bads, from rounds 141 to 199, you will only be facing regular bads, which is actually a little bit important for farming later on. Now, one thing we need to talk about is the main problem with free play. It's the fortified bads. Bads themselves are a problem as well. However, only having 50% of the HP of fortified bads, usually you can sort of kill them with just stray damage. There are also a ton of other things we need to one-shot so that we can focus all of our damage onto these fortified bads as well. And there's a ton of towers which are excellent at clearing up and dealing with these, which I go over in this video. And yes, I know my videos are quite long and quite lengthy, and you know what? Quite boring sometimes, I get it. But just trust me, this explains things pretty well, so go check that video out. So with all of these changes and notes in mind, from general testing, lots of practice, and learning as I go, the highest average round that I've generally encountered on easy free play, because, well, easy is probably the easiest to push as far as we want, is approximately 400 to 450s. But again, this is also pretty map specific. So now that actually begs the question, well, what map will I be playing on? Arguably, the best map for free play is Logs and Resort, maps designed by Ninja Kiwi. Many runs have been done and tested, and the highest round has been completed on these maps. But honestly, I don't care. These maps have already been explored in great detail by other BTD6 players. So what if you can design your own map? And again, we see why BTD6 is the quintessential king of tower defense games, because in update 39, the ability to create your own customized maps of the game was introduced. Not only does this allow for creative freedom, but well, now this also allows us to generate the most optimal map to try and go as far as we can. If you've seen my other videos, you know why I created a map like this previously, but let me explain to you again really quickly. Map time. The longest hypothetical map that you can actually create in this game is in the shape of an oval. It's really basic math, but the circumference of an oval is slightly longer than the diameter, which would just be a straight line. This map seen on Reddit shows the longest track of 560 RBS, or red balloon seconds. If you didn't know what that means, it's how long it takes a red balloon to travel across this map. Now, that's a long time, but there's actually also been a pretty key change to map editor since the original release, which they didn't announce. Originally, there was a maximum track length of 33 nodes. However, somewhere in update 39 to 40, they actually increased this node count. So now it was 48 nodes, and that is blasphemy. If we do a little bit more math, we can see that the increase would go from 560 red balloon seconds to 840 red balloon seconds, which is absolutely ridiculous. For context, Logs, one of the longest maps in the game, is 60.33 red balloon seconds. And this new map is 13, almost 14 times the length of Logs, which obviously can cause a lot of interesting new things to happen. However, there's a pretty severe drawback to this map. The biggest issue here is that there is not a ton of overlap. This is actually quite an issue for several reasons. If things are moving in a straight line, you're 100% guaranteed to utilize and maximize all of your piers, especially if the tower shoots in a straight line too, which is most of the towers in the game. If it's a larger oval, the track length is good. However, what good is it if the tower can't even target about half the time? And also having oval causes another problem, tower placements, where some things would synergize a bit better. Where would I fit everything? The track sort of being an oval causes some problems because we need to sort of consider where everything is going to be spaced out. So then, all right, I'm making a case saying that straight line's not good, oval's not good. So then what's better? And to that I say, well, why not do both? Since BADs have a decently large hitbox, having them somewhat within range is beneficial. A tower can still shoot down a straight line-ish while still being able to hit both sides of the BADs. Obviously, this isn't as long as the longest map, but still roughly give or take 700 red balloon seconds, which is still a hefty length, and I still think it's good enough where it can still maximize on its pierce, as well as still having some decent track length. As you may have noticed, this little fringe here at the end of the track is just to help me locate when the BAD will exit. Okay, so now we have a map that looks pretty ugly and weird. What in the world is this map? Couldn't I have at least put some flowers on it or something? No. Flowers make it worse because the more props and stuff you have in this game, it'll cause more lag, which we'll address a little later on, and trust me, this video is literally 2 months of lag. Okay, so if you're probably thinking to this point, alright man, you got map unlocked, you explained how free play is so hard, we have a decent understanding. Come on man, just get to it. Like, it seems like everything is fine, you just have to play it, right? Right? Right?
It was at this moment that he knew. He f***ed up.
So let's start the run now and let's talk about it, as I'm sure you're not here to sit and watch me do a video essay on late game. The first 2 hours I spent was on round 1 to 37. That's right, you heard me, I spent 2 hours setting up my farming to be very meticulous. Hold up. As current Raxor complains about his cute farming setup, I'll let you in on a little spoiler for the future. This run will need a lot of money. I'm not talking like 5 to 10 million, I'm not even talking like 25 million. I'm talking in the ballpark of 50, I'm pretty sure this run used 75 million, and I severely underestimated how much money I needed to start. Anyways, let's get back to present Raxor so he can complain some more. First, we're going to use our tier 5 monkey farms, as well as a bunch of other farms as well. Yes, I know I'm crazy for doing this, but trust me, this is 100% worth it for these runs. Honestly, when else would I use my tier 5 insta monkeys? As pretty as they are, they just collect dust for me, and I'd rather use them for a massive run like this. This is still within Ninja Kiwi's game design to have these towers, so we're going to allow it for this run. We will also be using a bunch of other insta monkeys as well, which you'll sort of see just to expedite things and get things going. The best way to farm in a situation like this is to spam all your tier 5 banana farms and your BRS within Monkey City range, which will boost all the farms' incomes, as well as get a bunch of overclops, which will in turn boost the farms' incomes even more. So we finished our farming setup on round 33 after some pretty careful optimization, and now we play. For the rest of the towers and cost, that will actually be determined by our next section, which is what is our strategy going to be? Today, we're going to be doing a strategy that is not very common for late game because, well, it's widely believed that late game is only better with Sun Temples and Adora. And here is where I hesitate. I'm inclined to agree and disagree at the same time. Adora and Sun Temples are hella strong. Don't get me wrong. In fact, I do believe they're still stronger than the ninjas. However, because we're going with ninjas and a Zeely, I just feel like there's a small edge that a Zeely gives them. This is highly up to debate. Today, I'm gonna put my money where my mouth is. We're gonna go with ninjas and a Zeely. Also requested highly from the community because, well, ninjas seem to be largely accepted as the underdogs. And to be honest, I've done too many Sun Temple runs for late game. As some of you might be asking, why don't I try and use Admiral Brickle instead? I mean, Brickle gives 2x attack speed for towers after all when they're on water. Well, because we're going for a ninja strategy, Brickle actually doesn't do this. Brickle only does this for certain water type towers, as seen per this statement. And finally, a lot of you think to seem that Geraldo is good. Well, while this is true, yes, Geraldo is amazing, even after all of its nerfs, you need to understand one thing. 9 degrees does not make a big difference. Yes, there is a decent spike in power, and yes, Paragons benefit a lot more for time stops and powers, which we'll discuss, but to be very honest with you, it really doesn't matter in the slightest. That little bit more damage will be made up by another hero instead. Zeely is one of the only towers or heroes in the game that can do HP percent based damage. There used to be other ones such as Unstable Concoction, but after update 27, this was nerfed. So after round 150, Unstable Concoction is not really usable anymore. All other heroes we won't really consider because they're not really suited for late game. So we talked about heroes. Why don't we dive into the center of the map setup now, since we're done farming for the most part. The next section we'll talk about the non-ninjas, the crucial roles that they will play in terms of damage, some stallers, some debuffers, or even buffers. On round 100, I'm done farming, or so I thought, and this is great for me. I need to start ultra boosting a ton right now anyways, so that's also a worry. We start with selling the bottom half of our farms. We're going to start with our water towers first, just so I can get rid of the pools early on, as I don't need pools after I get my Nautic Siege Core and my Navarre. We start with our Nautic Siege Core, the newest but I think one of the most crucial Paragons in the game. A normal Energizer can reduce cooldowns for all abilities except Paragon, and Nautic Siege Core does the same but with Paragon, so this is a no-brainer. Not only that, but it also does relatively okay damage for what it's worth. It's not much compared to our heavy hitters, mind you, but again, the cooldown aspect alone makes it pretty worth it. We will also be getting Paragon of Power for sub because none of the tier 5s are super relevant and Energizer is already given to Nautic Siege Core. We get a degree 91 on round 139. And closer to the front, doesn't really matter too much, but this placement will be great. Next up, we have our pools here. We'll get our flavored trade spam, and we end up getting our next Paragon, Navarre of the Seas, which will be the quintessential for one-shotting some fortified bads. Essentially reduces the number of bads by 2. And then a Zeely needs to worry a lot less about hexing 2 of them, which definitely helps a lot later on. So we get a degree 91 on round 155. Again, no Paragon of Power here, as none of the tier 5s are super relevant in my opinion. You could make a case for Carrier Flagship, but in this case, I want to get rid of as much lag as possible too, so just trust me, this is gonna be worth it in the long run. After my Navarre, I'll sell everything in terms of my farming, which is again a massive mistake, but we'll talk about that later. Let's go on to Paragon number 3, Magus Perfectus, a strong damage dealer. For its space, it's worth it. It'll do tons of damage as well. It's an essential area to target most balloons and will get a degree 91 on round 182. Our next Paragon, just 2 rounds later, an extremely important support Paragon being Glaive Dominus. At the back of the track to maximize Glaive spending damage, but mostly this area to sort of stop leaks in case a fortified DGT ends up zipping right by. Glaive is extremely important. The extra primary tower attack speed buff that it provides is second to none. We're going to be getting quite a few primary towers as well, so this will definitely be necessary. Our 5th Paragon will be Goliath Doomship, another beast of a Paragon. and we'll get degree 91 on round 191. We also get Carpet Bomb in the middle of the track to maximize the amount of damage it does to every bat. Carpet Bomb should hit both sides of the track, whereas if it was a larger oval, it probably would not hit either side of the track. Goliath will be the first one where we do not get Paragon of Power. It was found out that Flying Fortress actually is pretty worth it regardless of Paragon of Power, so because of that, we're going to get the tier 5 in the corner next to Goliath. On to our second last Paragon, which will be Master Builder. I decided to have Master Builder closer to the front of the track as it'll save some space where BTSG placement will be in the future. We also get a degree 91 on round 193. We're also going to be getting Sentry Champion and Ultra Boost, so no Paragon of Power for Master Builder. Sentry Champion just does way too much damage, and Ultra Boost is super valuable, so obviously no Paragon of Power here. And now our final Paragon, Ascended Shadow. Insanely crucial for Permo Grand Sabo, or 75% HP bads indefinitely. We're also be getting a whole ninja crew with Grandmaster Ninja and Grand Sabo. We're not going to be getting Master Bomber because we found out that having one Bloon Jitsu, which is a tier 4, is actually better than Master Bomber in the long run because Master Bomber has pretty flat damage. So we get our final Paragon, degree 90 on round 202. We throw a Zeely next to our Ascended Shadow right here so that it will not get consumed by our support temple, and we will not, I repeat, not be getting Apex here. Some people say it might be worth it just for its space and size, and I'm inclined to disagree. I believe that one Bloon Jitsu is actually more worth it, especially if it has 20 ninja stacks over the Apex. Apex is only really worth it if there are a ton of walls, which we don't really have the luxury here. And now, with the rest of our cash, we'll be setting up the rest of our damage all over the map now. Our first support temple here will be a 1011 to cover most of the map. Support temples are crucial in providing the following buffs. The most notable one is the 20% discount because I need a lot of cash, and also the attack speed bonus, pierce, and 20% range on all towers. Next up, our bottom BTSG, which will also make a 2122, so it'll be a support BTSG as well. Again, here are the most notable buffs.
Interesting.
They're similar, a bit more amplified. A good chunk of the ninjas, about half, will have this buff as well. Partially overlaps at the bottom of the track. BTSG here for a bit more straight line action. There could be an argument for both, but I think this was the right call in this instance. We skip ahead to a few rounds later on round 210, where we have our center setup. And this will probably be a setup for the more interesting towers. Starting with the bottom, we have a Ray of Doom. I decided I want to try both Mad and Ray of Doom facing each other on this map. I honestly know that Ray of Doom isn't the best damage dealer here. It has pretty static damage, but a random part of me wanted this beautiful straight line action. So I'm sorry. You can't fault me for that. It looks beautiful, okay? I'm sorry. BTSG at the bottom, as I mentioned, to try and maximize as much pierce as possible. My Master Builder in BTSG range with turrets on the bottom, which I'll probably relocate later on. Sentry Champion here to maximize damage as well, as it is one of the best non-Paragon damage dealers in the game. A random Monkeyopolis, but an overclocked Monkeyopolis has a pretty large range. And I want Monkey City more for the bottom because this will allow for Jungle Drum's range on pretty much all of my future Bloon Jitsus. A Bez here out of all the other stallers. After some testing, we found out that Bez actually does quite a good amount of damage as well. Also, it's very important to have different stallers at different sections of the map because it's good to just have an overall mix so that not everything is sort of funneled and targeted in one location. Super Mines as well, somewhat in the middle for the large radius and explosion of damage. Sub Paragon, Submerge so that it can maximize cooldown for Paragons as mentioned, and Navark on last for the 10% extra attack speed. Our support temple here for maximum range of all of our ninja spam. It covers basically the entire track, even without a door. And Magus in the middle to get decent rage on everything, as well as Azili in the middle. Azili didn't matter here too much, more to get within range of the temple's footprint to maximize some space. Same with Ascended Shadow, but this placement is still decent because it covers the ends of the track mostly, so nothing can really get past here. I also forgot to mention, there are embrittlements scattered across the map, as well as a super brittle here, trying to maximize the range of this bad boy. I debated and probably should have put this within range of the primary expertise. Probably would have done a bit better overall, but I think this is still fine. We have a Populist army and an Avatar Wrath chilling here because Avatar Wrath will also do wonders with his attack speed. Our Superstorm closer to the back again to try and maximize and get some leaks at the back. Primary expertise with most of our primary towers, with the exception of Super Brittle as I mentioned, back over here. Also, most range for the rest of the Bloon Jitsus that Monkeyopolis cannot cover. I decided to get an I-Ring to cover this top loop, as well as attack zone, just right here. A Glaive Dominus to catch leaks as previously mentioned, as well as providing support buffs to all my primary towers. Cripple Moab on Strong. This is actually a wonderful placement for it, because especially with Shrapnel, most things will actually be hit. Our Mad at the back, facing our Ray of Doom at the front. An Elite Defender here, again mostly for the damage it provides for a Shrapnel shot, which will do a butt ton of damage for us. A BMA at the back because it doesn't matter where the BMA sits, it has global range. A Glue Storm here as well as an Elite Sniper. Elite Sniper was also extremely not necessary, probably one of the towers I should not have gotten here as well as Ray of Doom. I sort of regret it a bit, but again, I got it more to buff the snipers, especially with the attack speed, but you'll see later on, it actually does a surprising amount of damage as well. So that's the center done. We haven't even begun our ninja army yet, which will be the most painful part of this setup in all of Bloons Tower Defense 6 history. And so now, let's begin the leg. Now we talk about the ninja setup. As we set this up, can you believe that there's ways to optimize this game further and further? First, let's talk about Ultra Boost, buying and reselling. Usually if you only have one Ultra Boost, then you can only use it 3 times per round. However, since we have quite a lot of ninjas to Ultra Boost, we're going to be Ultra Boosting everything as soon as possible. If we don't, we might hit a round and we might die sooner than we'd like. To do this, you simply have to buy and resell. It's simple but effective in setting up and moving along very quickly. And this is where the money issue I complained about a billion times really becomes a problem. Suddenly the money I have is looking pretty low. Not as much as I would have liked, and because a lot of buying and reselling, it'll lead to a lot of money lost. I played this portion pretty suboptimally as well. I could have used a favorite trades, which increased sellback, but honestly, I don't know why I didn't do this looking back now. I probably should have. I eventually smartened up and realized I'm gonna need to get a lot more farming back as well. So I get my farming back, and as some rounds go further and further, we finally start getting ultra boosting everything. And I'm not gonna miss a single thing here. Everything from every single ninja that's going to be a Bloon Jitsu to every single one of my shinobis as well. Yes, you heard me right. Every single one of my shinobis as well. Why? Because I'm absolutely insane. I realize I didn't need to, but why not? After all, every little bit of damage could possibly help here. The next thing is another issue on clicking on the game. If you've seen a lot of late game runs or played a lot of late game runs, you would have known about the fabled double click. What happens here is what you intend to click one thing, the game registers it as 2. As of update 42, NK actually decided to customize hotkeys, which is very welcome, but you know, I kind of finished this run pretty much by the time that was released. God damn. However, one comment that I previously saw mentioned a way to get around this double click. It was actually quite simple. All you had to do was hold the mouse for at least 2 frames. This would give the computer enough time to register that, hey, you didn't mean to click twice, but just this one button here, which definitely helped out a ton. In this portion of the setup, we'll also be getting Grandmaster Ninjas, the tier 5s, as well as Grand Sabo. And because and Grand Sabo because of the following buff. Grand Sabo adds the Grand Saboteur ability, which lasts 30 seconds instead of 15, reducing incoming mold class HP by 25%, which isn't necessary because we have Ascended Shadow, but it buffs all shinobis and gives them plus 10 range and plus 2 mold class damage for the duration. The plus 2 mold class damage is pretty negligible, but the plus 10 range, this is obviously extremely critical. Again, the plus 10 range will essentially give all of my ninjas even more buffs. As this finishes up, we have most of the balloon jitsus with 20 stacks. Not all of them, however, and this starts to beg one question actually. Do you take a tower which is considered 7 units, which is going to be overclock, or do you take another 6 unit wide tower? And I think the answer in this scenario is it depends. Overclock is great, don't get me wrong. It provides buffs to farms, it provides range for villages, and it's some next level feat that I cannot seem to. But the most important buff is the 66% attack speed for late game, which is ultra valuable. Why would I pass up the chance for a tower to do 66% more damage? And to do this, we need to understand something. If you haven't seen my videos on towers, which I mentioned previously, and what makes towers so good for late game, there are a few things. You either need to dish out a lot of damage, it could be slow but really impactful damage, but we found out that most late game towers benefit from having a lot of projectiles and firing really fast. So attack speed is a lot more valuable versus raw power because of the ability to buff and debuff. So I'm not going to get too much into the specifics, but go check out that video if you want a bit more context. This is where I believe having one raw shinobi and an unoverclocked Bloon Jitsu is better than having an overclock and losing out on one shinobi stack. And the reason is this. Shinobis increase attack speed by 8.7%, but this is multiplicative. So you aren't affecting just one ninja, you have a chance of affecting a bunch of ninjas. Also, considering the tower is 6 units wide versus 7 units wide for an overclock, hypothetically you can start fitting more Bloon Jitsus as opposed to overclocks as well. One thing to reiterate as well is that everything in the middle/center of the map will be overclocked. All of the tier 5 towers here will benefit to some extent from an overclock buff, so all of these will have it. BTSG, even this Monkeyopolis for massive radius. Overclock is still valuable on these towers, just I believe not for ninja spam. Which is why the layout is the way it is for this build. Bloon Jitsus as much in the middle as possible so that they can have a general overlap of the middle to try and reach everything, especially with their Seeking Shurikens so that their pierce is maximized. And I finally complete the top portion, and now it's time to move on to the bottom of the map. So you're probably thinking, Raxor, that's not bad. 15 hours of just gameplay? Whatever, man. I have edging streaks longer than that. And to that I say, okay. Well, I have nothing to say to that, but you also have to remember that this is also 15 hours non-stop. I couldn't go outside and count sand or blades of grass or something. I spent all of the time just doing the same thing over and over again, trying to ultra boost everything. But yeah, you're right. You know, some runs I've done, it's 15 hours. I'm sure the bottom half shouldn't take that long.
It did in fact take him that long.
Wait a minute. Did you read that right? It took me 335 rounds and 173 hours to set up the bottom half? Yep. And I'm not even exaggerating. While rounds 335 to 400 were a bit more to farm, as I ultimately noticed my desperation kicking in as I didn't have enough cash, setting up the bottom half at this point was getting slower and slower. The ninjas at the top were all set up, but that just means lag was starting to set in, and it was setting in pretty hard. As you see here, there's a few things we need to talk about now that are still related to the game, but now we need to understand this game from a hardware perspective. First, let's talk about what I'm running. I know this is not much of a popular opinion by all means, but personally, I'm more of a laptop kind of guy rather than a desktop.
Disgusting!
The main reason is, well, I'm sort of on the go all the time. I don't have time to sit down at a computer at my home most of the time because I'm actually usually traveling, going out to work, and having the flexibility to go out and sort of play on the go is extremely beneficial, which is why I'm currently rocking an ROG Strix G16. Not the best laptop on the market, but not also the worst per se. It gets the job done. I'm also not the most tech savvy sort of guy when it comes to laptops, desktops, hardware, so forgive me as I only really decide to get something that I thought would get most of the job done. Previously, I did play on an Asus ZenBook dual monitor laptop, which surprisingly held up decently well, although my frame rate got absolutely destroyed, especially when I'm trying to run a laggy Bloons Tower Defense 6 on top of OBS. So with this new laptop, I can at least focus a bit more on the game and pushing the game a little bit further, while also being extremely busy with real life. Next, we go into another optimization which is a little different from normal, which is mouse keys. To set this up, we actually need to get a numpad, which I actually bought because, as I mentioned, ROG Strix G16 doesn't have a numpad, which kind of sucks. I had to just buy one from Amazon. This allows us to literally move everything 1 pixel at a time, which means we can afford this to almost 100% accuracy. We can't afford to leave any large gaps unnecessarily, even for a few frames, because in the long run, this could potentially meaning a few ninjas, maybe 1 or 2 extra ninjas that could fit. So to be as exact as possible, everything is pretty much pixel perfect, with the exception of one small section here next to my perma-brew, which I could have potentially fit 1 or 2 more ninjas, and that was entirely my fault. I kind of didn't focus on the placement as I was setting up the last placement of where my perma-brew would sit. I also used this to optimize my farm placements earlier, as well as a few tower placements in the middle next to my VTSG and my support temples. There's probably very few places that I might have also missed out a pixel or two due to maybe the tower size or track overlap. With all of these tweaks on hardware, there's one more problem. And now we talk about OBS. So OBS is obviously the recording software where I record the game and make all these videos come to life. Running the game itself sometimes ate up about 80 to 90% of the RAM of my computer. In conjunction, filming this made it even worse, causing immeasurable amounts of lag. Not only that, but as you see here, my footage only goes up to about mid 700 or so. And that's because, well, there's too much footage. I was unable to film it all. So sure, I could have gotten an extra hard drive, and actually I did have quite a few, but I decided at this point, there isn't much point to record past round 750 because it's more or less the same from here on out. So now it just really begs the question, how far can we go? And now we talk about the final, most daunting part of this whole process, which is why most people don't attempt these sort of things, which is lag. At around round 700 or so, I had finally finished the bottom setup. But this was only the beginning of the next longest month or two of recording this game. Just to put into perspective how long these rounds started to take, each round started off pretty normally. Lag began to ensue around when I started the ninja spam. Rounds 300 to 500 were taking upwards of 20 to 30 minutes per round. But by the time I was hitting 600s, even 700s, it started to peak at around an hour, maybe even an hour and a half. From here, you may have noticed I have a ton of tech bots. Everything is constantly running its abilities literally at 1 FPS. With that in mind, I play. I play in spurts also to give my computer a break at times. Sometimes I leave the game running for 72 hours at a time and then give my computer a 24-hour break because I also don't want to explode my computer as well. After 72 hours, sometimes I only defeated 15, 20 levels. but I want to take this minute to also chat about Raxor. I do work full-time on top of doing YouTube as well. Mind you, I'm a pretty small creator. It's still pretty hard to dedicate some time to do all of this, but I do enjoy making these videos. If you do enjoy this, please comment, let me know. It is tiring, but honestly, comments like this really encourage me to keep going and sort of make something different compared to your typical Bloons content out there. On top of full-time work, I'm also getting married. I mentioned this in a previous video, but planning a wedding for the end of the year, so this is super time consuming as well. On top of that, I had also recently moved as well. So in the midst of running a full-time job, full-time wedding planning, full-time move, I found myself burnt out pretty quickly on YouTube. Thankfully, at this point of the game, it could run on its own for quite some time. So hours pass, days pass, weeks pass. Even at this point, months begin to pass. But finally, with one glimmer of hope, we make it to the new highest round in potentially in BTD6 history, done legitimately without even time stops or monkey boosts. We make it to round 1000. Round 1000 itself took 4 hours to complete. 4 hours! That's ridiculous! Who plays one round for 4 hours? That's like saying if you play round 40 for 4 hours? Are you insane? The reason at this point why lag is so strong here is all of the calculations that the game needs to calculate and do. But as you see here, it's so crazy in fact that there are some moments where nothing is happening. Sometimes for 10-15 minutes. My computer is just frozen. I'm trying so hard not to crash my game, so I literally just left it. Everything else is working just fine and smoothly in the background as I play this game, but the game is just trying to catch up. But we finally did it, and we finally beat round 1000. At round 1000, Bads, the easiest way to calculate their HP is by just throwing it into this formula. A quick plugin, we noticed that they will have 2,991.5 times the amount of HP as a regular Bad would have. So suddenly, Bads have 83,762,000, or Fortifieds have 167,524,000 HP.
Excuse me.
Ooh, that's insane. Towers are also 20.96 times faster than normal, which means while they're running like crazy, and I have no clue how close they are to the exit, but they're probably very close at this point. And now let's go over the most interesting part of this run, the breakdown of damage on all of our towers. Let's start going over the numbers one by one. Obviously, my embrittlements didn't do too much. Super Brittle at 186 million, which is pretty respectable. Triple Moab at 476 million. Primary Expertise at 680 million. Again, these are all pretty critical for debuffers or buffers, so they're very necessary as is. Here, Elite Sniper did about 1 billion damage, which, all things considered, I was surprised at actually. I didn't expect it to hit 1 billion, but it did, so we can't complain. Although, I can complain because the next group of towers that also did 1 billion were all the Poplusts. Poplusts each did even more than Elite Sniper. They did an average around 1.1 billion or so. Our next tower that showed up decently well was Superstorm. Superstorm hacked in around 5.6 billion, which actually did fairly well. I was very surprised. Next up, Elite Defender at 4.5 billion. Inferno Ring at a whopping 5.7. Our next is Sub-Paragon. Again, Sub-Paragon not really known for its damage, more for the cooldown, so I'll give it a pass here. But it did do 6 billion, so that's alright I guess. Next up we have a Mad at 9 billion. A Ray of Doom at 9.7. And then we have Taxzone at 12.7 billion. Bez at 12.8 billion. Bez surprised me the most here, and it actually kind of convinced me that I was actually completely wrong about Bez. I am suddenly a very true Bez believer. After Bez, we have Avatar Wrath at 13.4 billion. Glaive Dominus holding up right behind him at 15.5. And then, surprisingly a little lower than I expected, Flying Fortress at 16.3 billion. It is still reasonably good in damage, but all things considered, I thought it would do a little bit more, but can't complain too much. Next up, we have Century Champion, jumping up from 16 to 25.6 billion. And Century Champion held its own. It did really well. Support Temple at 26 billion, which makes me think that, man, it would do so much more damage with Adora. Supermine's also at 26 billion. And our Grandmaster Ninja at 26 billion as well. Just a little stronger than Supermine's. Master Builder just a little bit stronger at 27 billion. And then we come up to the whole Shinobi total, which is 43 billion altogether. Next up, we jump up to our Goliath Doomship at 48 billion, holding us off very strong. And then our nice big BTSG at 110 billion. Next up, we have Ninja Paragon, Ascended Shadow at 174 billion. We are starting to close in very quickly into the trillion mark. And then Boat Paragon at 353 billion as well. Grand Sabo had 423 billion. And now we go on to our main strategy, which was all of our Bloon Jitsus together for a whopping total of 870 billion. And now we hit the only two towers that were able to surpass
1 trillion.
The first, of course, is none other than the Bloon Master Alchemist, which hit 1.1 trillion. One of the first to hit this milestone. And finally, the strongest tower that supported us and essentially carried us through victory. Azili at 1.25 trillion. So 1.25 trillion. That's absurd. That's insane. So as you see here, we had some pop counts kind of going up as we go. And here is an average amount of damage that they did. So as you see here, Azili and BMA essentially together did more. They did 51%, where everything else did about 49%. So Azili and BMA did more damage than all of the other towers combined. Granted, obviously the other towers are all necessary, as I mentioned, for all those reasons, but very interesting to note. So now there's a few closing remarks that I have to mention. I actually didn't even buy powers. More specifically, I did not buy Monkey Boost or Time Stops. And the reason for this is, well, the defense held off. Not only that, I didn't even need to buy and resell Azili either, which could help push rounds even further. There are a ton of other things I could have done as well. I could have bought and resold Homeland, I could have bought Caltrops, and I could have tried to optimize the track even further. And so I guess this is sort of the new highest round, but this isn't the final answer. And here's my new conclusion. There are a ton of things I could have done to push this further and further, but given all the lag, I feel like I had to stop at 1,000. Otherwise, I would spend the whole year just to reach around 2,000 probably. However, this run made me realize one thing. Bloon Jitsu is strong, yes. However, I think Sun Temples are still stronger overall, given the fact that you can overlap some towers and throw some stuff in there. And also given the fact that Adora can buff their range and their damage output like crazy. But the more I played this, the more I realized that Azili is actually insane. In fact, I'm starting to strongly believe that Azili is the strongest hero for late game now. The cap of the ninjas is high. They are strong for cheap, and we established that here. The cost of the Sun Temples are much higher, but they're also much stronger. And I believe, as I mentioned, Adora and Temples have a higher ceiling cap. But again, the common problem and the main problem about BTD6 in free play is that technically everything has flat damage. Everything. The ninjas have flat damage. Sun Temples and Adoras are strong, but they have flat damage. It is the argument that was made about all the other towers. The reason why they're so bad, even though they might seem like they're really strong, is that they have flat damage. The only true hero that has percent damage is Azili, which in theory, hypothetically, will trump over everything if you're able to buy and resell Azili at a good enough pace and had infinite cash. And I believe this, and maybe I'll try this in a future run. If you enjoyed this video or somehow made it this far, I thank you so much, first of all. Thank you so much for hanging in there and waiting for me patiently, as I've been working so hard on this video for a long time. If you're not subscribed, what the heck are you doing? Subscribe now, and also like this video. I plan on getting back onto a more consistent schedule, as I probably won't be doing a late game video for quite some time. I plan on working tirelessly to keep pushing the confines of this game, because I have a few other ideas in mind, and this is indeed only part 1 for me. I hope to see you all in the next video. I promise it won't be 2 months this time. I'll see you in the next one.